My name is Leonie Sherwin. I'm the Program Manager for Professional Learning and Program Support here at the Professional Educator Standards Board.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Megan Moore, and I'm the Preparation Credentialing Program Assistant. We'd like to welcome you all to the Since Time Immemorial Tribal Consultation webinar, hosted by the Professional Educator Standards Board, also known as PESB, and OSPI's Office of Native Education. I'm going to let Laura and Denny introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you all. My name is Laura Lynn. I am the Program Supervisor with the Office of Native Education within OSPI. I am the daughter of Grace Elizabeth Cusick and Kenneth Lee Rohr. I'm a descendant of the Chickasaw people, and also I have ancestry European, Eastern European, and with my father's people, also a relative of those people from the Mideast, from Syria. Would like to say good morning to you all. It's a great privilege for us to be able to be learning together. So those of us who are here at OSPI, we're sharing the traditional lands of the Squaxin Island people. And we have one other introduction to make, is the Honorable Denny Spar Hurtado. Denny is a citizen of the Squamish tribe and the retired director with the Office of Native Education. And Denny will be, again, sharing really the history of the Since Time Immemorial Curriculum Project, as well as some of his insights about how we can strengthen our collaborations and partnerships with tribal nations.
The purpose of today's webinar is to understand the history of the Since Time Immemorial Curriculum Project. We'd like to learn more about the importance of and protocols around tribal consultation, foster collaboration between educator preparation programs around tribal consultation, and the sharing of resources. I just want to run through the agenda briefly. We just finished welcome and introductions. Laura did a wonderful land acknowledgement. PESB and the Office of Native Education collaboration. We'll have guest presenter. We'll hear from Denny Hurtado from the Squamish tribe, which will go over the history of the STI, protocols around tribal consultation. We'll have time for question and answers. And then educator preparation program presentations. We have great presenters today who are collaborating, and we have Western Washington University, University of Washington Seattle, and University of Washington Bothell, and they will also have times for questions and answers. Western Washington University Woodring College of Education hosted the Since Time Immemorial Higher Education Summit, convening higher education teacher preparation program leaders, Tribal Leaders Congress on Education, OSPI 1, and WACD. Kristen French from Western Washington University will share more information during her presentation later this morning, but we would like to recognize all of those involved in the convening, including Michael Vendiola, Dr. Annalise, Michelle Vendiola, Dr. Kristen French, Dr. Megan Bang, Dr. Don Hardison-Stevens, Dr. Beth West, and Dr. Chris Friday. Francisco Rios funded the event and advocated for WACD partnership and participation in funding, and Senator McCoy was a keynote speaker. In 2018, the legislature acted to require teacher preparation programs to ensure all educator candidates engage in learning experiences involving OSPI's Since Time Immemorial curriculum. As you can see, the WAC reference mandates that teacher candidates engage with the Since Time Immemorial curriculum focused on history, culture, and government of American Indian peoples as prescribed in WAC 181-78A 300. In May 2018, PESB approved WAC 181-78A 303, requiring Since Time Immemorial curriculum integration. Please note, this WAC requires all programs to have a 1-quarter or semester course. At this time, there is no required format for integrating the STI curriculum. It could be a standalone course, it could be integrated into a 1-quarter or semester course in Washington State History and Government, or the Pacific Northwest History and Government, or it could be integrated into several different courses. At our next webinar, we will be learning the different approaches various preparation programs have taken to integrate the curriculum. Since that time, PESB and the Office of Native Education have been collaborating to ensure the guidance and requirements that are offered to educator preparation programs are well fit to the guidance and requirements offered to schools and districts. In the summer of 2019, PESB and Office of Native Education developed an STI steering committee whose purpose was to develop a support strategy for preparation programs. We'd like to take a moment to thank the committee members for their time and energy as they served on this committee. In the fall of 2019, the steering committee developed and distributed the STI survey to educator preparation programs across Washington state. Based on the needs identified in the survey, the steering committee created the first 2 stages and a plan to provide support to preparation programs. After the first 2 stages are complete, the committee will reconvene to consider next steps.
So based on the feedback that we received through the surveys, we wanted to be responsive to our higher education partners as part of the implementation of the curriculum. And so these are some next steps that we're currently in progress with through our collaborations. We have obviously today's webinar is actually the kickoff of opportunity for us to continue our learning together. I wanted to also make an acknowledgement that the feedback is ongoing and continuous. And so really your ideas and questions that really emerge also from today's webinar continue to inform what our next steps are going to be. Also, the Office of Native Education is in the process of completing a tribal consultation webpage. One of the important aspects of this curriculum is that we be doing this work in collaboration with tribal nations. And in order to support those processes, again, our office will be hosting a webpage with additional resources for both our higher education partners, also with our district partners. We are also going to continue to gather data in terms of understanding the implementation process. The initial legislation did not make provision for a monitoring system. However, we have different pathways that we can gather information to understand the implementation process. And so our office will continue to do that work. And then also we know that your programs have an interest in strengthening, of course, the collaboration you have with your district partners, specifically around their implementation with the curriculum project. So this coming spring, we are in the process of scheduling our basic trainings and training of trainers. These are trainings that have actually been offered through the Office of Native Education, really since the beginning of this project. A recommendation is that these trainings are really targeted toward in-service educators and programs who have responsibilities for implementation of the curriculum. I just want to acknowledge that some of you have been encouraging your pre-service candidates to also participate with trainings. And depending on where they are in their completion of their programs, sometimes it's a fit, other times it's not. If candidates are within their practicum teaching space toward the end of their program, these trainings are really appropriate and helpful. If they're at the beginning of their preparation programs, there's still a lot of things that they're trying to figure out, and sometimes the trainings are a little bit beyond their reach for the connection there is what we've been observing with that.
Guidance will be developed for preparation programs around content, assessment, best practices for curriculum integration, and tribal partnership and consultation. Once this guidance is developed, WACD and WCAP will have the opportunity to receive the language and provide input. The guidance will then be presented at the PESB May board meeting and posted on PESB's website along with other STI resources.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Denny Hurtado. I'm from the Skokomish Nation. My Indian name is Tachmi Ashton, and we get our names from our ancestors. So I got my name from Tachmi Ashton, whose European name was Dr. Charlie, and he was a doctor, an Indian doctor in the 1800s. So that's how we and the Coast Salish people get their names from their ancestors. That's my Indian name, and it means come out of a warm house into the cold. You see that breath of air. That's the definition of my name. I'm going to go through the history of STI and how it came about. Just a quick drive-by, because this took years and hundreds of people to get this through the process and developed and whatnot. And we've been meeting with the feds and the state for a long, long time. And then there's been many reports on what the needs are of our people. And a lot that came through in every single report was that language, culture, and history for our people was important. And that's why we went on this journey to ensure that everyone in the state and the world understand what our history is about and what we're about, because we live by each other. We have a shared history. Part of the movement for this curriculum was to really educate all students about who we are and what we're about, because a lot of times people live right next door to us and they don't even know they're living on a reservation, or that we have jurisdiction over our people. We co-manage the fisheries and the hunting and whatnot with the state of Washington. So a lot has happened here in Washington State compared to many of the other states in the U.S. We're going to focus on education, because we feel that once people understand, who we are and what we're about, that it creates a better venue for us to develop relationships between each other. I mean, we've been here for a long, long time. We don't plan on going anywhere. And so the goal was to educate people about what our history was from our point of view. And so way back when, the 20s, the Merriam Report, the Kennedy Report, all those reports all pointed towards what we believed we needed to do, and that was to develop curriculum around our history, culture, and language. So those meetings started a long, long time ago, pre-1973, but we're just going to start with 1973. And then a lot of curriculum was developed in the interim by many different peoples. Of course, not a lot by Native people. There is a lot of curriculum out there, but it's not developed or sanctioned by the tribes or the tribal communities. So we decided we wanted to develop our own. In 1989, we're the only state in the U.S. that has developed the Centennial Accord between the tribes and Washington State. And we meet once a year with the governor and his cabinet and all his directors, and they meet with all the tribes and their directors and their cabinets and whatnot, and develop the relationship between each other instead of trying to fight it out in court all the time. So this happened in 1989 at the Burke Museum at the University of Washington campus. And I'm one of the original signers. There were 20, well, I think the original one was 26 signers. From that, the Centennial Accord was signed. We meet every year with the governor, and we basically talk about issues that we can resolve. There's those issues that we can't resolve, in a day or two or even in a year. And so we try to stay away from those and really work on issues that both sides can think that we can reach some consensus and goals to accomplish some changes within those areas. So that was signed in 1989. Then 10 years later, 1999 is the Millennial Agreement. And that just focused more on different issues and being more prescriptive on how we dealt with things. In the beginning in '89, there wasn't really much conversation about education. And myself being an educator, I decided I wanted to really push this on the agenda, that it was important that we talk about education, not leave it up to the state or the feds for that matter. And so through time, it finally got on the agenda, and now it's a main topic, and it should be, because education is key to many issues. And the main goal really was to develop better relationships between the tribes and the state and the local government, because too often our tribes and our state are fighting each other at all levels. And so we need to really look at what we want to do and try and develop better relationships for the good of all people in the communities. And that was the goal. And relationship piece is key. Because if you don't have a relationship, then forget it. It don't matter if you have the best curriculum in the world, the best schools, the best buildings, the best, all the money in the world. If you don't have a good relationship with the people you're trying to serve, you're just losing the battle. Because we know that you don't care and you don't want to get to know us. And the word goes both ways. We have to, it has to be reciprocal. Understand their side, you need to understand our side, and then we need to come together and decide what's best for everyone. So then we went on a journey. We had the summit in 2003. It was the first Indian Education Summit in the state of Washington. And the focus was totally on education. And so the first day, the governor came in, sat on the end of the table, and around him were all the tribal leaders. And every tribal leader had X amount of time to say something. By the time it got to the last tribal leader, it was loud and clear that the tribes wanted curriculum around their history, culture, and language in the state school system. That was consensus. And then the second day, it was the same venue, but it was with Terry Bergeson. And then it was about the same as the previous day. They wanted curriculum around history, language, culture in our schools. That time, Representative John McCoy was elected to the state legislature, and he heard it loud and clear what the tribes were saying. And he, at the end of the meeting, the second day, he promised that he would try and get a bill passed in the state legislatures in 2004. So in 2004, we were getting ready and we were trying to get the bill passed, and things were happening really quick. We were trying to garner our support, and it didn't happen. We weren't that prepared. It was just too fast. So it failed the first go around. Then in 2005, we had all our ducks in line. We thought everything was copacetic. And so all the elders came in and give their speeches about how important it was for us, the teachers, the principals, the community, the students. They all had their say. And then at the end of the day, and this was with the committee, end of the day, they voted, yeah, we vote unanimously to pass this. We thought everything was great. So of course everybody leaves, and it's just John McCoy and I are there, and we're standing there in the hallway. And then Ross Hunter comes out and he goes, hey, you guys, we need to change one word. And I knew what that word was going to be, because Washington is a local control state. We don't really dictate per se what curriculum they have to use, right? So I knew that was always going to be problematic, but I didn't think it would come out the very last when everybody left, and we had to deal with it right there and then. And so what happened was John looks at me, he goes, well, what do we do? And I'm like, well, I think we should still do it. But this is after they said, you just have to change one word. And what is that one word? That one word is shall, to encourage. That's a big word, right? Changes everything. And we're just there standing. I'm thinking, well, it still would be good for the state to recognize the importance of this to our tribes. We're getting our foot in the door, and we'll take the flack later, which we did. And so we just decided, okay, we're willing to go for that. Of course, later tribes and people were mad, saying, no, it's got to be mandatory. I know, but do you want it to die on the vine right here, or try and keep it moving? So that's what we did. And so in 2005, they passed House Bill 1495. And the in-house, part of that 1495, though, came about because two entities were evolving. One was the Tribal Leaders Congress on Education. They were evolving at the same time we were at OSPI, and we were kind of growing together. And Tribal Leaders Congress on Education are the tribal entity that kind of helped us guide us through the process of what we needed to do to develop the curriculum. And so that happened. So we got some money. And so the first thing I did, knowing that, this is a big job, you talk about tribal sovereignty, that's a big deal in the world. And most people don't even know how to spell it. And I didn't even know how to spell it. I thought, well, I better learn how to spell this because I'm going to be using this word a lot. And so I learned. And, so that's kind of how I got about. We started this committee. 50% of it was state and 50% was Native. So there would be a Native lawyer, attorney general here. We'd have a white teacher, a Native teacher, the state Library Association, the Tribal Leaders Association. And so that's kind of how we had that group of people guide us through how we're going to develop this curriculum. That's when we hired Shana Brown and Jerry Price and Elise Washines. They were part of the committee. They were the main writers of the curriculum. And they thought they were just going to do a 1-week curriculum. Little did we all know that we were going to get into years and all grade levels and all that, So through their guidance, we started the development of the STI curriculum. We were downstairs and we had all the walls. We were mapping it out. We're like, everyone had something. And all 4 walls were full. And we're just like, what the heck are we going to do? And this is crazy. And like, then Shanna, who's a technology geek, she had this bright idea. Well, we can put it online, and I can do it. And I know how to do it. I'll help you. So that's kind of how that happened. That was good because that timing was perfect, right? Because then you can get it to more people everywhere in the world for free. This is all free. We had to go garner. I had to go out and raise millions of dollars to get this done because the state didn't give us a lot of money. Because I was tribal chairman of my tribe and I was on tribal council for 17 years, I had a relationship with all the tribes, and their leaders through the years. And so then I went around horse and buggy and went and begged and borrowed for money, how important this is. Unfortunately, Muckleshoot tribe came forth in the first one and we asked for 20. And they called us back and they said, do you need 40? Of course we do. So we started out with that 40, and that's when we started the development of our curriculum to be online. And then we got a Gates grant. We furthered that more to do pilots at certain schools. And then, that happened later on. Here's a committee right here that was our first committee to help guide us through this process. And then right after that, the state wanted the legislators, they heard us loud and clear. They wanted to have reports from all the 5 different ethnic groups, what was important to them and their students. And actually ours was the most comprehensive report of all 5 of those reports. And it's still a document that you need to look at if you're serving our students and our community, because there's a lot of good information on there. And that's From Where the Sun Rises, which was done by Washington State University. And the Office of Native Ed has copies of that. It's probably online. You can get it online and whatnot. So that was help support us in our efforts to get this curriculum in the school system. Then like in 2008, we did the pilots with certain schools, some of the tribal schools in the state of Washington. We met with them for a year, trying to figure out how we wanted to do that. We came up with a list of 5 or 6 schools that bought into the process and worked with us in developing the data and whatnot. It became a journey for a lot of us. I mean, we had some wins, we had some losses, but the main goal was that this report was published by the Gates, the pilot on the STI, and that's for public record too, so you can get a copy of that too. and read what some of the issues were when we were pilot testing the curriculum in the school system. The good thing about the curriculum is it's leveled, and anybody can learn it or teach it. Level 1 is you can go talk to your class about a article in the newspaper about gaming or fishing or whatnot, and have the conversation, at least talk about it. That's level 1. Level 2, you start digging deeper. Level 3, you're really into it. People have been writing papers on STI for their graduate, stuff. I mean, lots of people. And so, I mean, it's taken off, and that's what's good about it. It's leveled, it's free. The Office of Native Education provides the training for all the teachers if they want the training. I mean, it's really simple, and we focus on really trying to help the school develop a relationship with their local tribe or tribal community, because not all the time tribes aren't accessible, depending where you're at. So there's always these pockets of tribal communities that you need to work with them, and develop that relationship with them. You can't always make that relationship with the tribal leaders all the time because they're so busy all the time. You're going to be dealing 90% of the time, 95% of the time with their staff, just like any other government. All this stuff's online. You can go on websites, and we work with Goya, and Goya is the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs, and they have all the information on the tribes, their tribal websites. They help update it every year, and so if you have questions about what tribal area you're in, you would go to the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs website, click it on, and it'll have all 29 tribes on their site. 2015, this bill came out, 5033. This was the big deal here. This is when the word got changed again, back from encourage to shall. And that was a big win for us. And the other issue that we did too, when this was all going along, is we aligned our curriculum with
the social studies standards, also the English language arts standards, and it's now aligned also with the environmental and sustainability education standards, and we're currently aligning to the social emotional learning standards as well.
And that was a chore in itself. I didn't realize how hard that was, because you go through every sentence in your curriculum. Unfortunately, we had a lot of Title I program staff help us with it, and a lot of tribal ed staff help us. Our curriculum, the STI curriculum, was the first curriculum in the state to be aligned with those standards. That was good, because now it's required for every school to teach since time immemorial in Washington State. Now, I know there was a part in here too that when we were going through all the budget cuts, we were getting worried that they were going to eliminate the office, the Indian Education Office, because that's usually what goes first. And we know what comes on last goes first in budget cuts. So we were worried about that. Yeah. And so then we rallied and said, well, you know what? We need to get our office in statute. And so then John McCoy goes, okay, let's get her done. Our office is in statute as of 2011. So now we're pretty much protected. And that was important to us so that we could continue the work that's still going on today, which will go on for a long, long time. We've had, I don't know, these guys probably trained 3,000 teachers or more to date, or more. Not just teachers, but librarians, professional Title I folk. I mean, all, Indian Ed directors, even tribal leaders just come to learn more about it. And so anyone can be trained really how to use it. But it's up on the website. If you had certain questions on how to use a curriculum, or if you were having issues around parents or whatnot, you could go to that video and look at it and watch the whole training yourself on your own time. It's been a long journey. I've heard so many elders tell us that they wish they had curriculum like this when they were kids, not on just natives, but all people, because they only learn about the Lakotas, basically, or on the Northwest. They don't learn about us, who we are, and what we're about. And that was the goal, to better educate people about who we are and what we're about, hoping that I would break down the barriers and knock down some stereotypes about who we are as a people and as a nation, because a lot of people just believe that we get all this free money, we don't pay taxes, blah, 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 blah. It's all lies. We do pay taxes, Yeah, some tribes do get money, but not all tribes. The big tribes, even big tribes, they might look like they're getting a lot of money, but they have 10, 12,000 people in their tribe. So, I mean, that if you start giving money away, that's big chunks of money right away gone. Mm-hmm. So it's been a journey for me. I'm really vested in this, That's why I'm here today. But all these bills, we came together as a group. John McCoy was key, myself, from OSPI, and then the tribes. So those are our partners, and the universities came to support us. We hit up the universities right at the front end. So now John got a bill passed to require STI to be taught in the teacher ed programs, which it should be, because if they want to come and teach, there's how many schools that have 30% or more Native students in their classroom? There's at least, I can't even remember, 80, 100 schools, So, I mean, we're just there to help with the work we did with the University of Washington to help them do their teacher training and prepare teachers to be able to come to Indian reservations and not get freaked out around Christmas time and say, wow, we're not used to this. No one told me about this, and they freak out and they leave. So then they're stuck with no teachers, and that's common through the U.S., because a lot of our schools are out there in the hinterlands. Take you a day to get out of there to get to town, So, and we have a lot of video on our curriculum. The one cool thing we did is we worked with Montana State University, and they got a $2 million grant to videotape all the elders in the Lewis and Clark Trail, all the way from probably St. Louis to Chinook. Mm-hmm. And they got all that video of all these elders talking about all different, plants, foods, fish, hunting, all these things. And then their project came in and said, well, we're done. What do we do with all this? And Shanna again had a brilliant idea. So, well, why don't I'll make them an offer and see if you can buy the copyright and we can use it in our curriculum. I said, okay, well, let me go see if I can raise $20,000 more. So we did, and we offered it to them, and they said yes. And so that's all that video is ours now. And there's really good video there.
So we have just a few minutes left, and I'm wondering if there are just a couple of our higher education partners, their journey is continuing, and they want to also be able to strengthen their relationships with tribal nations. I know you spoke to a couple of considerations for our partners. Are there a couple other thoughts that you might share with us about, as they do their work in a good way with that?
Well, I think, just developing the relationship with the tribes. I mean, that's key. And have face-to-face meetings too, once in a while. I think, UW, it took a while, but we got them to do the teacher certificate program, and that was big because now teachers could have this certificate on Indian education. And just that paper alone would get them hired, because they have this special training around Indian education. And so I know Don and them are working hard on that, Megan and Don and them. And then Kristen does her thing up at Western. They're doing their stuff. I mean, Evergreen, all these places are doing stuff that came off of our stuff, and it enhances each other's stuff. So I just say, keep on working at it. And the thing that you brought up about monitoring, well, how do we make sure schools are going to monitor the progress of STI in the districts. And that's a big question too. So I think that needs to be addressed. I know our curriculum goes from preschool to college, because we incorporated the preschool people to help us write our, preschool curriculum. Well,
So the foundation that you and Senator McCoy and others created continues to grow.
Well, I guess my issue would be to make sure that the principals and the administration and the school board know that you are actually using the curriculum, and let them know what you're doing and what your issues are. So a lot of times they don't know what you're doing. So we believe that it's time to build bridges and make it better for all kids, period. Doesn't matter. A lot of times teachers or community members, well, why do we got to learn about Indian history? Why don't we learn about Italian history or well, you can go to Germany or Italy, but where do we go? We're living it right here. This is where we learn about who we are. And so that's why it's different than anywhere else. That and the fact that we have treaties signed between our nations and the US government. That puts us apart from any other group in the US. And so that's the difference. And so we need to live by that because it's in our Constitution. We're referenced in the Constitution. I say, hey, more power to you. And that's a great question.
Up next, we're going to have our preparation programs share. I'd like to thank all of our presenters today, and they'll be introducing themselves shortly. While we know many other programs have consulted with local tribes around this work, our time is limited, so we will hear from these programs today who have collaborated in this work. If there's more interest in hearing from other programs in the future, please let us know.
Well, I guess I'll start. This is Kristen, and I'm faculty at Western Washington University, and I'm Blackfeet, Skapi Bukuni, Grovan, and Eastern Band Cherokee. I'm faculty in elementary education, and I'm also the director of the Center for Education, Equity, and Diversity. And I'm here representing myself and Dr. Annalise and the work that's been done at Western. And I also want to acknowledge our tribal liaison, Laurel Ballou, who started just over a year ago in a new position at Western Washington University. And Laurel is key to the great work that we're going to be able to do with our partnerships with our local nations. I also just want to say before we get started that thank you to the committee for hosting this, and thank you to Denny. If Denny's still there, Denny is such a humble person, but has just had such a tremendous impact on this work and made it possible for Western actually to participate in this with his relationship with Dr. William G. Demert, who is faculty here. And I'd be happy to say a little bit more about that.
Since we're introducing ourselves, I'm Dawn Hardison Stevens with the University of Washington, Seattle. And I'm a Mushkeg Cree and a Chippewa Cowlitz, and I'm on Stella Comes Tribal Council. I'm at the College of Education here at the UW, and program manager for the Native Education Certificate Program, which is a 2-year certificate offered to educators, practicing educators, and administrators. And we're currently winding down our 2018-2020 cohort with many teachers, many tribal community members, 2 superintendents, and 5 school principals. And also we're launching our next cohort for the 2020-2022, which launches in August 17th, 18th, and 19th, another 2 years. Also teaching the teacher ed program, Understanding Tribal Perspectives. And for Kristen, Anna, and I have taught this course with teacher ed programs with K-12 and enjoy it. Also teach History of American Indian Education with the American Indian Studies Department. And that's me in a nutshell.
I'll introduce myself next. I'm Sarah Shear. I am a new member of the University of Washington Bothell School of Educational Studies faculty. teaching in social studies, education, and multicultural education. I got here in August from Penn State, where I was working the last 5 years. My work is in the intersections of Indigenous studies and social studies curriculum studies, and I am from both settler and diasporic backgrounds, particularly Ashkenazi Jew and Welsh and Scottish.
I too would like to acknowledge Denny Hurtado, if he's in earshot, for all the work that he's done, and also as one of the UW Seattle College of Education board members, our Indigenous Education Advisory Board, and also all the vision and work that he's done for the Native Education Certificate Program to get it launched and off the ground.
So Laurel just sent a comment that she is here in support of all the work that we're all doing. So thank you, Laurel, for being on. So I'll begin. This is Kristen again. And I think and please Dawn and Sarah jump in. We wanted to talk a little bit about institutional collaboration between us. So, and I think UW really should talk a lot about the great work that they've done and bringing us in. So I'll just start by sharing that UW and Western have been in partnership and collaboration now for several years. This collaboration really started with the Office of Native Education and Denny, and also Michael Vindiola, who was doing great work as the director during his time. And we were meeting, Western Washington University has a great relationship with all of the one directors, so we're really excited to meet the new director. And we've just, Joan and Laura are fantastic, so we're just grateful for them. And so in 2015, I was given a leave or a special assignment by our dean for 2 years to figure out how we would implement the law that hadn't been passed yet, but how do we do that in higher education? And so weekly a group of us met together with Michael Vendiola at the time. And then when Dr. Annalise joined the faculty, she joined that as well. And we hosted a consortium, a STI Higher Ed consortium, which became the foundation for our Higher Education Summit. And that Higher Education Summit was held in October of 2016. And the idea with that was to answer the question, how do we in higher ed, how do we teach our teacher candidates to do right by our local nations and also with the STI tribal sovereignty curriculum. So our big question was, how can STI be implemented into teacher education programs so that pre-service teachers will be well prepared? So we hosted a 2-day gathering where we invited stakeholders, and this was hosted by our dean, Francisco Rios, who was just spectacular. He's faculty still, and we really value him, but his time as dean was incredible. And so he was able to secure funding for this event and worked with WACD to also support this event, which brought together the colleges of education and the Tribal Leaders Congress. We had Senator McCoy as a keynote speaker, and we also had Mandy Smoker-Brodus, who was at the time the director of Indian Education for the state of Montana, who had been doing great work with Indian Education for All. One of the great pieces of this event was bringing the different schools of education together to have each of the schools that were working toward this to share out their experiences and their perspectives and how they were working toward this. So that was fantastic. So many of you on this may have been participating in that. So thank you. At this time, we had also, UW and Western had applied for the WASAC 21st Century Grant, which we received. So by the time we held the the Higher Ed Summit, we were working with 8 different school districts and the teachers in those programs to develop their capacity to teach STI in a way. And we chose these 8 school districts specifically because of their large numbers of Native students. So I'm going to pass that to our UW buddies to talk more about our collaboration in terms of how we came to develop the STI 1 credit course between UW and Western.
Yeah, at the conference there up in Western, it was pretty spectacular, with positive energy, and it was absolutely amazing. And, to work with Western and create this partnership, had, one of the things that Senator McCoy during his keynote address was commenting that universities need to work together and establish partnerships. And so it would just seem like a given, with University of Washington and Western, with Kristen and Anna. And we just joined in, and our dean, the assistant dean, Patrick Sexton, had commented that, let's start a class and let's get it rolling and get something piloted, that summer. And so Dr. Megan Bang and I, we frantically created a 1 credit course, sold it to the directors, and then we piloted it. Anna Lees taught the Seattle Teacher Residency group. Kristen French taught the elementary cohort, and I taught the secondary teacher candidates. And, so we piloted this program and received feedback from the students, what they liked, what, should be revised. And it was an incredible experience. And, with that, we took the program, made some revisions, and Anna and Kristen were able to implement it at Western Washington University in their College of Ed, Woodring. And, here we are. And it's made some more revisions. Our program, again, needs update, but basically it introduces teacher candidates to the Since Time Immemorial curriculum. And, from the curriculum, they use some of the resources, such as mapping. And one of the assignments is, which 3 tribes are nearest your location from where you live or where you work. And then participants choose a tribe, and what can they find out about that tribe? They have to research that tribe. And from there, they establish community engagement plans, who within the community can be implemented in working with them, whether it's on curriculum for their classroom and or point of contact with information to help enrich their classroom or even become speakers. So, establishing these partnerships between the schools and the tribes. And so we've established 4 modules. One's overview of the tribal sovereignty and history. Another is the critical reflections for evaluating and designing learning with Native people. Module 3 is land, water, place, space, and since time immemorial. And module 4 is creating classrooms where Native peoples are always present. So participants have readings, including one of the articles from Sarah Shear. They do the readings, then they do discussion posts where they discuss and have conversation with each other. And then they have an assignment that needs to be turned in, whether it's a community engagement plan, whether it's a final reflection, a tribal unit, depending on where the class is academically. It's either a lesson sketch or a unit plan. The UACT, the Accelerated Certificated Teachers, they do unit plans because they're already engaged in teaching. Whereas some of the learners, we approach them in summertime, so they're on their either first or second term within the program. And so those participants do sketches. One of the things piloted last year with the secondary teacher candidates was all professors in that summer program all collaborated around the Since Time Immemorial and worked with it with me as I brought in the travel perspectives. So it's incredible to have this team of people to work with. And Sarah, I'm going to let you jump in because Sarah was one of our panelists. We end our summer program and teachings with a showcase where students showcase their work and the lessons in the units to tribal community members, and we have presenters and panelists, and we brought in Sarah during that time frame, and it was honored to work with her and meet with her, and for students to meet with her since they had read some of her work and had become familiar, and to meet her in person, and now to have her at the University of Washington Bothell is incredible.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be here and being able to work and collaborate and learn from everyone. As I had mentioned in my introduction, I got here in the late summer and hit the ground running. One of the major tasks I was asked to take on was to think about and begin implementing, creating, writing UW Bothell's coursework for Since Time Immemorial. And Bothell campus has taken a different route in terms of credit hours. So our pre-service teachers are going to be taking 5 credits of coursework around Since Time Immemorial. And so when I got here, I just started emailing everyone I could find, really wanting to connect and learn from folks who have been doing this work for so long. It's incredible work that I've been watching and learning from and writing about as part of my research for several years from afar, but now being here is an incredible opportunity that I greatly appreciate. So I was able to connect to several people to begin, dreaming and brainstorming and really thinking about what we could make of 5 credits of coursework here at Bothell, and what ultimately we have decided on and we're piloting now in the spring is a 2-course sequence. So taking the 5 credits and splitting it over 2 classes. So our pre-service teachers will be taking an online 3-credit class that really lets them dive into the content of what they would, eventually be teaching. And so the online modules are built around their own learning about tribal sovereignty, about treaty relationships, nation to nation, about land pedagogies, etc. So they'll be reading from books and articles as well as having a documentary module where they'll come in for a choice of a place-based, a locally based documentary, so they can really begin to build their content and context knowledge and have that space just for them as learners. The second course is a 2-credit standalone methods class where we're going to take from that 3-credit class as well as the work they will have done then in science, literacy, math, and social studies that are also going to take pieces of Since Time Immemorial and introduce them for those specific content areas. And when they come to the 2-credit methods class, we'll really be able to dive in, and that's going to be hybrid. It's going to be both online and with several in-person gatherings to really think about how to take these rich histories, the complexities with nation to nation treaty relationships, and think about that in terms of teaching right now for the elementary level, and eventually our secondary students. We are relaunching our secondary program here, our secondary students, to think about that for their courses. So I'm excited for that pilot that we're launching in the spring. I'm excited to continue the collaborations that I've begun since I got here, including the beautiful relationship. I've learned so much from Dawn and Kristen, and it's been such an inspiration to see how the other campuses have been designing their courses, and also learning from folks who have been working on Since Time Immemorial since the beginning, to really make it a rich experience for our Bothell pre-service teachers.
I'll jump in here onto this slide. As we worked on the Understanding Tribal Perspectives course, it was imperative that we partner with tribes. And here in the College of Education, we're pretty fortunate to have a board of tribal leaders. We have 20 tribal board leader or native leaders. We have 2 College of Education faculty and 2 College of Education students on our advisory board. And it was during one of our meetings where we were presenting and 2 nations, Muckleshoot with Willard Beale Jr. and Suquamish with Joe Davalos and Leonard Forsman, offered to have teacher candidates go down to their tribal schools. And since then, we've made it where it's an annual part, an annual aspect of the elementary, secondary, and since Seattle Teacher Residency, the summer program, to go down, travel to Muckleshoot Tribal School and or the Suquamish Chief Kitsap Academy. And we're graciously hosted by administrators, by teachers, by students, complete with tours of the schools, question answer period, history of the tribes, culture of the tribes. Over in Suquamish, they have a storyteller, historian, who takes students, I call it the big yellow limousine, on the school bus. And they get a tour of the reservation and, complete story, history, visit Chief Seattle's grave site and more stories. And so it's a pretty enriching experience. Same with elementary and a Seattle Teacher Residency program when they go visit the Muckleshoot Tribal School, and from tasting foods, tours, learning about the language, how language is a part of the culture and the learning process. And so it's a pretty enriching experience for the teacher candidates. The other courses, special education and the certificated teachers, are unable to get out of their classrooms. So one of their requirements is visiting a tribal museum, and it has to be specifically a tribal museum that's nearest the location of their teaching. And I say this because a lot of those educators are in Eastern Washington, down in the Tri-City area, Yakima area, Spokane area, Chelan, and also California. So they're pretty spread out. And so they have to visit a tribal museum and report back on what resources, how can they utilize that museum as part of the teaching process, adding it in their curriculum. And so it's engaging. Typically the majority of the students are in the Puyallup area, Tacoma area, and Seattle area, and Tulalip area, and Yakima area. And so those tribes become involved, and I've contacted those folks who help with meeting students at those museums and offer guided tours.
Hi, this is Kristen. So when we, just to go back to slide number 2 about site-specific collaboration, I'd say, Ann and I talked quite a bit about this and what we wanted to share. And currently we are partnering with Lummi Nation. And we wanted to stress that we still have a long way to go with our site-specific collaboration. So the relationships that we have with Lummi Nation are really relational partnerships that we are currently working with Lummi Nation School, particularly Bernie Thomas, and working with the Chelangen department, but specifically with Cynthia Wilson and with Lummi Higher Education, with Renee Swan-Waite, who are just incredible folks. And so we have partnership goals, of course, to determine the local tribal nation partnership boundaries, and that's where having a tribal liaison is such a great opportunity for us, because we can be in consultation with the tribal nations that, we're trying to figure out just the boundaries of who are the communities that we should be developing these relationships within the Western Washington University boundaries. Some of the things that we're considering with that are Nooksack as well, because of the ancestral homelands are both Lummi and Nooksack, where Western sits. But we also have campus sites on the peninsula, so working with Suquamish and Tulalip with our Everett program with extended education. So we're really hoping for the future to have more of this kind of institutional partnership where our president of the university, our dean, with the guidance of our tribal liaison, make those specific relationships. And of course, with the Office of Native Education. I'll go ahead and go with 3, 2. Just this is Kristen again. I want to just again refer back to our history, and the development of this has taken a long time, and we've had great relationships with the Office of Native Education, starting with Denny Hurtado and moving on. And so our partnerships are not just the local nations, but we have partnerships with the Office of Native Education. We have participated when asked to participate in the Tribal Leaders Congress on Education. Our UW STI partnership has been incredible, and this just grew when Sarah came into the community. It's just been so beautiful. Again, our Lummi Nation is connections are relational, and we would like those to be more institutional, which will also mean that our institutional leaders are going to need to work directly with tribal council and with the Chelangen department to develop that kind of relationship of what we want to do. So, and Anna and I have been collaborating and working with different Lummi Nation programs.
This is Sarah. So as Bothell continues to develop its coursework, pilot it, edit it, and receive feedback from our various collaborators, I'm also in conversation and meetings with Marjorie James to host a similar event that was inspired by the event at Seattle campus for the pre-service teachers to share their work in community. So Marjorie and I are currently brainstorming and dreaming of the event for the coming spring at Tulalip for our pre-service teachers to share their work in community.
I was talking about the partnership with the Muckleshoot and Suquamish tribes, and their beautiful hosting of students, teacher candidates. And so I was mentioning that, and one of the things that we're hoping to do is engage more fully with the Indian education program with the Seattle School District and outlying districts. One of the things that that came to my attention last quarter was with teacher candidates who were wanting to work with the Duwamish Museum and the Longhouse there. They were having their teacher practicum, and one of the things that Holdosa has done is all teachers within the Seattle School District need to go through the Indian education program there and not go out on their own. And so I'm going to learn a little bit more about that and then bring in the Indian education program with the Seattle School District. And then I've talked with Federal Way School District, their Indian education person, and I also know that brief conversation with Laura, and you can jump in and correct us. Teachers will be going through the Office of Native Education when it comes to working with tribes and with tribal contacts and who to contact, and have that resource more open and available to all teachers.
Hi, Don. This is Laura. Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, so what we're, 2 things. We'll be hosting a tribal consultation on the Office of Native Education website. So that would be one resource, and most certainly that will be linked to the Since Time Immemorial curriculum website. And in the trainings, what we do is we share about that really the responsibility of the government to government relationship building is to be done really at the highest levels of our districts. And we certainly also encourage that our educators, and building and district leaders be very visible and present within our tribal communities for those events that are appropriate in terms of, the public events like the canoe journey, if there are powwows that are hosted by the nation that are open to the public, other kinds of gatherings like that, and certainly to strengthen our relationships with our students and families, our students who are tribal citizens and descendants as well. So there's both the formal work of the government to government work, and then there's the informal work around our relationship building, being citizens within communities with each other.
There's another group also that needs to be tapped into, and that's the urban native programs in all areas, especially here in the Seattle area. And that's another group that we'll be in contact with.
Yeah, so it's for us. It's still very fresh and new and ongoing conversations to really start to build the capacity for our collaborations and partnerships. So I'm learning a lot from my colleagues, on moving forward and also wanting to work collaboratively across not only the programs within UW, but across our university systems. I think that it makes the work that we're trying to do all the stronger, as well as be very conscious of the requests that what we're making from our tribal neighbors, so that it is not an extractive relationship. That's very important for us as we're thinking about the work we're trying to do with our 5 credits here at Bothell, and to make those relationships strong and healthy, and not taking too much or pulling from places where other energy needs to go.
And I'll just quickly say for Western that, again, previously we had worked together with UW for the STI grant site visit. So we visited all of our sites and had online modules, but we also held 3 summer institutes, 2 in the beginning and 1 at the end, to really develop those relationships with many nations across the state of Washington. And currently for Western, we have, similar to both UW Bothell and UW Seattle, we have site visits for each of our courses, our 1 credit courses. And we have tribal community involvement in that. So for example, today we're heading out to Lummi Nation School for a site visit with our 32 STI higher ed, LED students. And then we'll go back to present our poster presentations at Lummi Nation School with the students and the staff. So that's been really great. We also are working with partnerships to get feedback from our colleagues on our course and curriculum design. And then in terms of future goals for us, we're hoping to have something similar to UW with an advisory council, but specifically having kind of a tribal community education liaison here for the college. And we also really want to do some shared professional development with our students, our teacher candidates, as well as the schools that they're partnering in. So while we have the 1 credit class that all students take, we've added an additional credit to the education, culture, and equity class, so that they have, technically 2 credits. And we talk about the sociopolitical and historical, kind of foundations of Indian education. And then we also have in the methods course in social studies, students are actually teaching the STI curriculum.
And looking at the slide here, as mentioned, it's as far as community engagement and recommendations, I highly recommend a tribal advisory board. And we, as I mentioned, we have, as Brian Fledubsy says, some heavy hitters, because it includes Patsy Whitefoot, Sally Brownfield, Joe Davalos, Leonard Forsman, Brian Fledubsy, Brian Brayboy, Megan Bang, Elizabeth West, Wilson Arnold, Dana Arviso, Anthony Craig, 2 faculty, Geneva and Ken Zeichner, and then we have 2 students. And we share everything with them. We get their approval and get their advice, and it's pretty nice to have. They've shifted from the Native Education Certificate Board to the College of Education, Indigenous Education Advisory Board. So they're now overseeing all of the College of Education Native initiatives here in the campus, which includes the certificate program, which includes the teacher ed program, which includes also Anthony Craig was hired for Leadership for Leaders, which is a doctorate education program that Native people can obtain a principal or superintendent certificate with Anthony Craig leading the helm. and who's Yakima Nation and lives on the Tulalip Reservation. And got life sciences that includes Native initiatives and another program that's specifically titled Native Initiatives that looks at grants and grant opportunities to help all programs, Native initiated programs in the College of Ed.
Yeah, I just want to add on just one of the things I've always let people know, particularly my pre-service teachers and in-service teachers, as they're thinking about the work of since time immemorial and their own learning and partnering, that these relationships take time to build, and it's not something that we can or should be doing in a rush. And unfortunately, that sometimes conflicts with legislation when it comes down. So the ways that we can support each other in the capacity of healthy relationship building so that everyone benefits from it, I think is something that we should continue to keep at the forefront and continue to have in conversation.
And Anna and I just wanted to reiterate that we completely agree with both Dawn and Sarah, and we also wanted to add to this recommendation list that this work requires resources, and that's time and funding. So our schools of education need to make sure that they're supporting these efforts. And then we also wanted to add that Indigenous knowledges are essential, and that the faculty, staff, and community need to be involved in this process. And we have to make sure that the folks that are teaching these courses or are implementing aspects of STI have the capacity to do so.
If you guys do have follow-up questions, we have contact information listed from our presenters. In closing, we'd like to once again thank all of our presenters today, and thank you to those of us who joined us for this webinar.